In November 1969, a letter arrived at the San Francisco Chronicle. It was 340 characters long, a mix of letters, symbols, and what appeared to be a completely random sequence of codes. The FBI took it, professional codebreakers took it, mathematicians took it, amateurs across the world spent decades trying to crack it. Nobody could. For 51 years, that letter sat there, unread, taunting everyone who looked at it. A message from a person who had ended at least 5 lives and was never caught, and apparently thought the whole thing was fun. Then in December 2020, 3 people, a software developer in Virginia, a mathematician in Australia, and a warehouse worker in Belgium, cracked it. And the first line of the message read, "I hope you're having lots of fun trying to catch me." Nobody ever did. This is the story of Zodiac Killer, the most notorious unidentified person in American criminal history. The ciphers he sent that nobody could read. The one man investigators believed was responsible, and why after nearly 60 years, his identity remains officially unknown. To understand the Zodiac, you have to understand the world he operated in. It was 1969, Northern California. The Bay Area was in the middle of a cultural revolution. San Francisco was the center of the counterculture movement. The Summer of Love had just happened there a year before, and people genuinely believed they were building a new world. And then on the night of December 20th, 1968, a 16-year-old girl named Betty Lou Jensen and her 17-year-old David Faraday parked their car on Lake Herman Road. It was their first date. They were teenagers in love. They had no reason to be afraid. Both were found the following morning, gone. Nobody saw anything. Nobody heard anything. There were no witnesses. No obvious motive. No suspect. Police investigated. Found nothing. The case went cold. But this was not the end. It was the beginning. 6 months later, on July 4th, 1969, a young couple was attacked at the Blue Rock Springs. Darlene Ferrin was 22 years old and Michael Magoo was 19. They were sitting in a parked car when a man approached them from behind and opened fire. Darlene did not survive. Michael did. Barely. He was able to give investigators a description. Heavy build, short brown hair, round face. The man had said nothing. He had simply walked up, fired, and walked away. Shortly after shooting, the police department received a call. A man's voice, calm, deliberate. He told them exactly where to find the bodies. Then he said, "I also killed those kids last year." He was referring to Betty Lou Jensen and David Faraday. The same person, and he was calling to make sure everyone knew it. 3 weeks later, 3 letters arrived simultaneously at 3 Bay Area newspapers: the San Francisco Chronicle, the San Francisco Examiner, and the Vallejo Times-Herald. Each letter was identical. Each contained details about the crime that only the person responsible could have known. Each also contained 1/3 of a 408-character cipher, a coded message that the writer demanded be published on the front page of each newspaper. The message at the end of each letter read, "If you do not print this cipher by the afternoon of Friday, 1 August 69, I will go on a kill rampage Friday night that will last the whole weekend. I will cruise around all weekend, killing lone people in the night, then move on to kill again, until I end up with 12 people over the weekend." The newspapers published it, all 3. And 8 days later, a couple in Salinas, California, a high school teacher and his wife, who liked puzzles and ciphers as a hobby, cracked the code. Inside, a rambling message about killing, giving the sender the most thrilling experience, and a belief that the people he had taken would become his slaves in the afterlife. And the name. He signed it, the Zodiac. What made the Zodiac different from almost any other person who has committed terrible crimes was not what he did. It was what he said afterward. He wrote letters, dozens of them, to newspapers, to police, to the district attorney, each one signed with crosshair symbol and beginning with the same phrase: "This is the Zodiac speaking." He sent pieces of his victim's clothing to prove the letters were genuine. He sent a piece of taxi driver's shirt soaked in that man's blood. He sent photographs. He mocked investigators by name. He told them he was collecting victims as slaves for the afterlife, and that the more he collected, the more powerful he would be. He threatened to shoot out the tires of a school bus and pick off the children as they came out. He described in detail the kind of bomb he was building and where he planned to detonate it. None of those threats were ever carried out, but every time a new letter arrived, the entire Bay Area held its breath. He claimed in one letter to have taken 37 lives. Investigators have confirmed 5. The true number is unknown. The letter stopped in 1974. The last confirmed communication was a postcard to the San Francisco Chronicle. With a reference to a film and the words, "Me equals 37. And then, nothing. Silence. For 50 years. Let me take you through what we actually know, because the specific details matter here. After Betty Lou Jensen and David Faraday in 1968 and Darlene Ferrin in 1969, the Zodiac struck again 2 months later. September 27th, 1969, Napa County. Brian Hartnell and Cecilia Shepard were college students enjoying a picnic by the water. A man approached them wearing a black hood with a crosshair symbol drawn on the chest. He tied them up. He told them calmly that he was going to use them to get a boat. Then he produced a knife. Cecilia did not survive. Brian survived despite severe wounds and was able to give a detailed description of what the man had said and done. He described the voice as calm, businesslike, almost bored. Before leaving, the Zodiac wrote the dates of his previous attacks on the door of Brian's car and marker, then called the police himself from a payphone to report the crime. The final victim was Paul Stein, a taxi driver, shot in the Presidio Heights area of San Francisco on October 11th, 1969. The Zodiac had posed as a passenger. After shooting Stein, he cut a piece of the man's shirt, took it with him, and later mailed it to the Chronicle along with a letter mocking the police. 3 officers had actually driven past the scene moments after the shooting. They received a description of the suspect over radio, but the description has been transmitted incorrectly, saying the suspect was black when witnesses had described him a white man. The officers drove past the Zodiac as he walked away from the scene. They didn't stop him. He was right there, and they drove past. The Zodiac sent 4 coded ciphers in total. The first, the Z408, sent in 3 parts to 3 newspapers in July 1969. Was cracked within 8 days by an ordinary married couple in Salem who liked puzzles. Donald and Betty Hardin solved it using pencil and paper and a hunch that the message would start with the word I, because the writer seemed like someone who thought about himself a great deal. The second cipher, Z340, sent in November 1969, was a different matter entirely. It was 340 characters long. It used 63 different symbols, a system so complex that multiple symbols could each represent a single letter of the alphabet. It had deliberate errors and misdirections built in, as if the writer was specifically trying to make it as difficult as possible to solve. The BI tried, the NSA tried, Mathematicians tried, amateur code breakers around the world tried. For 51 years, nobody could crack it. Then, in 2020, three people working across 3 continents cracked it. David, a software developer from Virginia, Sam Blake, a mathematician from Australia, and Gerald Van, a Belgian warehouse worker who had written specialist decryption software in his spare time. Using Van's software, they ran the symbols through millions of possible configurations. And in late November 2020, two phrases appeared. Trying to catch me. Gas chamber. They fixed those phrases and ran the software again. More words emerged. Paradise. Slaves. By December 5th, 2020, they had the full message. I hope you're having lots of fun trying to catch me. That wasn't me on the TV show, which brings up a point about me. I'm not afraid of the gas chamber because it will send me to paradise all the sooner. Because I now have enough slaves to work for me, where everyone else has nothing. When they reach paradise, so they're afraid of death. I'm not afraid, because I know that my new life will be an easy one. In paradise death. He misspelled paradise the same way in the Z408 cipher. Both times Paradice. Investigators noted that as a potential signature. The FBI confirmed the solution 51 years after the letter was written. They finally knew what it said. It gave them no new leads, no name, no location, nothing that helped identify him. 2 of the 4 ciphers remain unsolved to this day. Over the decades, investigators looked at thousands of people. The San Francisco Police Department had investigated an estimate of 2,500 suspects by 2009. But only one man was ever officially named a suspect by law. His name was Arthur Lee Allen. Allen was born in 1933 in Hawaii. He grew up in Vallejo, California. He served in the U.S. Navy, then became an elementary school teacher. He was later convicted of child sex offenses and lost his teaching position. He was 6 feet 1 inch tall, heavy built, round face, short brown hair. He matched the description given by Michael Magoo, the survivor of the July 1969 attack. Here's what investigators found when they looked at Allen. He owned a Zodiac brand watch, the same brand whose crosshair logo the killer used as his signature. He had told a friend before the killing began that he wanted to go out and shoot people at night and call himself the Zodiac. He owned the same type of knife used in the Lake Berisa attack. He wore a jumpsuit similar to the one witnesses described at the same attack. His handwriting on a sample given to investigators showed similarities to the Zodiac letters. When investigators searched his trailer, they found a knife with what appeared to be dried blood on it, and ammunition matching the type used in the attacks. But here's where the case falls apart. DNA was extracted from stamps and envelopes used to seal the Zodiac letters. It did not match Arthur Lee Allen. His fingerprints did not match prints found at the Paul Sign crime scene. Multiple handwriting experts also concluded his handwriting did not match the Zodiac letters. Arthur Lee Allen passed away in August 1992 of a heart attack. He was never charged. He maintained his innocence until the very end. And the DNA from those letters has never matched anyone. But the Allen story did not end with his passing. In October 2024, Netflix released a 3-part documentary called This is the Zodiac Speaking. It featured a family called the Seawaters, 3 siblings who had known Arthur Lee Allen as children and considered him a father figure. David and Connie Seawater described Allen as great, big, burly, smiley, friendly. He would have dinner with the family, take them on weekend trips. They thought the world of him. But they also described something else. In June 1969, Allen took the Seawater children on an outing to the beach near Santa Barbara and told them to stay in the car. When he returned, his hands were covered in blood. They later discovered that the same day, at the same stretch of the beach, a young couple named Robert Domingo and Linda Edwards had been shot and stabbed. This crime was never officially linked to the Zodiac, but investigators have long considered it a possible early attack. The Seawater siblings also said that years later, Allen had confessed to them that he was the Zodiac. But there is no recordings, no evidence, and the DNA still does not match. On Reddit, where the Zodiac case had been debated for years, the community is deeply divided. Many people believe Allen was responsible. Many believe the DNA rules him out completely. Some people believe there are 2 people involved. One user wrote if the Zodiac was one person, it's not Allen. But if Allen was involved, then there had to be more than one. Nobody agrees. Nobody knows. What I want to say is that a lot of Zodiac content presents theories as facts, and I don't want to do that. Here's what we actually know. 5 people lost their lives. 2 survived attacks. The person responsible was never identified. The FBI case remains open. There are several reasons investigators believe the case was never solved. The crime was spread across multiple areas. Different cities, different counties, different police departments. In 1969, these agencies did not share information effectively. Evidence was not centralized. Leads were followed by different teams who sometimes did not know what the other team was doing. The Zodiac was also careful. He chose victims in remote locations where there were few or no witnesses. He wore gloves. He never left fingerprints that could be matched. And the partial prints at the Stein scene has never been matched to any known person. And then he simply stopped. Whether because he moved, whether because he passed away, whether because he was incarcerated for another crime and nobody made the connection, nobody knows. The letters stopped in 1974. The attacks stopped in 1969. And whoever wrote those letters, sent those ciphers, and ended those lives, walked away from all of it, and was never found. What stays with me about the Zodiac is not the mystery. It is those who lost their lives, 16 and 17-year-olds. First day, a quiet road on a cold December night. They had done nothing wrong. They had no connection to whoever found them there. They were just two teenagers who ran out of luck and had the worst encounter. The ciphers and the letters and the theories get all the attention. The people who lost their lives sometimes get lost in the noise of it. Darlene was 22. Cecilia Shepard was 22. Paul Steen was 29, working a late night shift. None of them knew that the person who found them that night would never be identified. That decades later, people would still be debating on who he was, while their names sometimes feel like footnotes. The Zodiac case remains open. If you want to go deeper, the sources are in the description, and I would genuinely recommend the 2007 film Zodiac, directed by David Fincher. It is the most accurate recreation of this investigation ever made. I'll see you in the next one.